Let's be real. Running a business with ADHD can feel like trying to organize a tornado. One minute you're brimming with ideas, and the next you're staring at a half-finished to-do list wondering how you got here. But what if I told you your ADHD isn't a flaw? It's actually your business superpower. Today, I'm diving into why ADHD brains are built for entrepreneurship, how to stop feeling like you're constantly failing at being an adult, and how to work with your brain instead of fighting against it. Spoiler alert, it's not about a rigid routine, boring admin, or forcing yourself into a productive box that was never made for you. So grab a snack, embrace the chaos, and let's talk about how to turn your ADHD into your biggest business advantage. Buckle up, friend, and let's go. Hey there, you just stumbled into the Anxious Creative Podcast, where overthinking turns into ahas, mess-ups become magic, and anxious spirals, totally part of the process. I'm Dawn Bradley, your messy, imperfect host, here to help you, the recovering people pleaser, the perfectionist, to stop chasing the unachievable and start embracing the chaos. Spoiler alert, that's where the real magic happens anyway. So buckle up, friend, because we're about to have some laugh so hard till you cry moments, a few hard truths to help you grow, and naturally a little, or let's be honest, a lot, of oversharing. You ready? Let's dive in. ADHD in business can feel like an absolute disaster. My brain jumps from one idea to the next and I can't finish anything. And then all of a sudden my to-do list is basically a graveyard of half-started projects. But what if I told you that ADHD is actually your secret superpower as an entrepreneur? Today I'm breaking down why your ADHD brain makes you an absolute powerhouse in business and how to stop letting distractions and overwhelm hold you back. And here's the thing, most of the business world is built for neurotypical brains. That's why we struggle with things like rigid schedules, long-term consistency, and doing boring admin work. But ADHD brains, we're wired for innovation, creativity, and taking risks, aka all the things that make us great entrepreneurs. And I have to tell you, I was only diagnosed 3 years ago, but since understanding my brain more, I can look back on my career and see how it helped me. A lot of times I was told I was lazy just when I couldn't get myself moving for boring tasks. But when it came to doing something challenging or taking a risk, I always was able to do it. It was more exciting. I look back and I've always been very innovative and coming up with creative solutions to things. And it helped keep things fun, and it was able to help me stay on the cutting edge of things. I like, for better or for worse, I get bored really easily. As soon as something becomes routine, I want to change it up. And I find that's helped me stay on top of things. But the reality is that so much of the world isn't created for brains like ours. And so it's easy to start feeling like, how come I can't do it? Or everyone tells me this is so easy. I remember someone being like, doing your bookkeeping is so easy. And the easier and simpler the task is, the harder it is for me. But learning and understanding this about myself, and instead of trying to conform and fit myself into the box of what I think I'm supposed to do, or because it's easy thinking something's wrong with me, knowing my strengths and weaknesses. And that's one thing I did in my business from the beginning, was like, I don't like the boring and monotonous tasks. They may be easy and it would take a normal person, quote unquote normal person, like 5 minutes to do it. I know I'm going to drag my feet. So why would I do this? And recognizing, instead of shaming myself until clearly I'm not cut out for it, clearly I'm not smart, is I just need to actually know my strengths. And I know I'm creative. I like coming up with new ideas, but anything that becomes routine, I got to outsource. And so I think this is where our brains are actually our best assets. Is we are innovative, we are creative. They say, I don't even know what the percentage is of entrepreneurs have ADHD, because we are really great problem solvers. But it does come with the fact that we can really struggle with the boring, monotonous things that a lot of people are really good at. And that's where finding people who can help you and support you in your business, that love to check off a list, that love to do the same thing over and over again, will be a total asset to you. And so knowing that you can find creative solutions to things isn't something, although it comes so natural to you, it doesn't come natural to a lot of people. And recognizing and celebrating that. And so I got to tell you, like, we all know about hyperfocus with ADHD. And there was a time where this really came in handy for me. And it was actually when I first went out on my own. I left the salon I was at and I gave my 2 weeks notice. And that same day I got walked out of the salon. Now they did it completely legal. It felt very, coming from a salon that felt like it had family vibes. It definitely felt abrupt, and I don't believe anyone else ever got walked out from that place, but I take that as a compliment that they saw me as a threat. And I remember waking up the next morning at 4 a.m. and just getting to it. And I didn't know how to create a spreadsheet. I didn't know any admin stuff. I had been a hairstylist for 10 years. I knew how to do hair. I had my new space and I was like, I got to get up and running. And instead of being overwhelmed and scared and panicking and freezing, I just got into action. And I think this is where our hyperfocus, we sometimes use it as a bad thing. Oh, I got so focused. But honestly, I think harnessing it when it comes into play, sometimes I can't get myself to do anything. But when that clicks, when that problem solving, when that excitement, when that novelty kicks in, and I just want to stay focused on something, staying in it, and also being a Taurus and being really stubborn, using that hyper focus as a way to push through something. Like one lady that I work with, she's like, you can get like 4 weeks of work done in a day when you're hyper focused. And this is so true. And yet I want you to understand this. I'm using the positive and negative side of it is because I've seen how much I can accomplish when I'm hyper focused. I start to think that's what my everyday should look like. And I've had to check myself when you think of, I've never worked in a corporate setting, but when you think of someone who has a corporate job, what do they actually accomplish in that 8 to 9 hours that they're at work? What's the expectation? And when you go self-employed, I know for me in particular, I all of a sudden put this huge expectation on myself to be able to accomplish every possible thing I could in a single day time. And I would work 12-hour days. And the reality is you have to give yourself some grace when all of a sudden you go self-employed and you are now the receptionist, the boss, the admin, like you're taking inventory, you're doing orders, all that stuff that your boss took that commission from you for to pay for. All of a sudden you're doing all those things and you're wearing many hats in your business and you're trying to only work 40 hours a week without outsourcing anything to anyone else. You're going to need to hyper focus to get that all done, but you're also not going to be able to get it all done. And you can't expect yourself to get as much accomplished on a regular day as you do when you're in a hyper focus. And that's something that I had to learn the hard way is ADHD is our secret superpower. However, you can't have the expectation or shame yourself into going, well, clearly I'm not being productive today because I'm not as productive as when I'm in a hyper focus. I need you to understand that your hyper focuses are unique times and you can harness them and use them to your advantage, but they are not the norm. So please do yourself the favor and don't have that expectation. And then because as ADHD people, we can shame ourselves and we can be really hard on ourselves and put really high expectations on ourselves. I need you to understand that shaming yourself and telling you I should have done better, it should have been this way is just not what is going to work. Have compassion for yourself. Embrace the hyper focus when it comes. I know we can't always control when it comes. Take advantage of it as best as you can, then give yourself the grace. Like it's wild how I will have 2 or 3 days a month where I crank out so much stuff and then I feel like I'm a failure for the rest of the month, which just isn't the case. Another thing that I've also learned to track as a female is my cycle and knowing when my productive times are. And my ADHD is quite affected by my hormones as well. And so understanding when I'm going to have more energy and when I'm going to have more focus is definitely helped. And honestly, I hate that ADHD gets a bad rap. I hate that people use it of, oh, I'm a little bit ADHD when they're talking about being scatterbrained. And usually it's used as a negative term or, oh, I'm being a little ADHD, I'm being squirrely. And I really want to flip the script on that because I think it is a really beautiful thing. And we can use it to our advantage by being innovative, by being creative, by being silly, by being quirky, by enjoying the chaos, by thriving in the chaos, by thriving in as much as you don't want the stress. When you don't have that little bit of stress, you're actually not motivated, and seeing how a little bit of chaos, instead of trying to get your life in order. I am like queen of trying to find an organizational system that will work for my life, that will make me super productive and functional in life. And yet it feels so boring. I need a little bit of chaos, but healthy chaos. So I need a little bit of mess in my office. I like to tidy it up and I like to keep it clean, but I get messy when I get creative. I brought out construction paper a couple weeks ago and did some crafting and just let myself make a mess. I think giving yourself room, stop using ADHD as, oh, I'm so squirrely, or using it as a put down to yourself. I think that gets a bad rap. and really using it of, oh my gosh, my ADHD helps me be innovative. It helps me be creative. It helps me switch from one thought process to a next. It helps me, it can make us hyperfocus, but it can also help us turn on a dime. It helps us work in crisis really well, like when things happen in business. And I know the stress and anxiety that can come with it. I know I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety before I was diagnosed with ADHD, which seems to be very typical for a lot of females that are diagnosed later. But realizing that it doesn't have to be a bad thing. And I think that was one of the hard things that when I first got diagnosed was feeling like there was something wrong with me. And also the grieving process of I was 38 years old when I got diagnosed, looking back on my life and thinking, man, how could things have been differently? How could I have managed differently? How could I have, if I had the help or the support, how could I have done things differently? And I think there was this whole, as much as I embrace it a lot now, there's still this shame about how come my brain doesn't work the way other people's does. But I don't want it to. I really don't want it to. In all reality, what I really want is people to accept me for the way I am. And I think that's been really hard, is feeling like my entire life I was told to fit a mold, and I tried so hard and it was exhausting and I didn't feel like myself. I didn't feel like I fit in. I felt like I was wearing a mask, which I didn't even know what masking was. I felt like I just wasn't being true to myself. And then the moment I started becoming true to myself, people are like, oh, like you're just being fake. I had someone call me that once and it was like the worst criticism. It hurt the most because I was actually being myself. But when you've been pretending to be someone your entire life for survival, to fit in, to not get made fun of, to not get teased, to not get pointed, like to not get, what's the word I'm looking for? Had the spotlight shine on you. And then all of a sudden your uniqueness is what you want to shine. It's hard to undo all that conditioning you've done to yourself or had been done to you. But learning to embrace who I am fully, spelling mistakes, grammar mistakes, shitty proofreading, quirky jokes and all, and just being like, I'm not going to be everyone's cup of tea, and that's okay, but I want to be my cup of tea. I want to be proud of myself. I want to be happy with myself. I want to feel like myself. I want to let go of the inhibitions and just be who I am, quirks and all. Oh my gosh, it feels so good. And so I think that's something of learning to embrace your authentic self in a world that's told you to be someone else to be acceptable is a lot of undoing of conditioning, which can take some time, but I promise you it's worth it. But I think one thing that really affects you and I a lot because of it is the fear of failure and the fear of being seen failing and the embarrassment that comes with that. I know for me, a lot of the time people tell me like, I'm scared of failing. And I was like, but what are you actually scared of underneath of that? So you fail, you pick yourself back up, you try again. Is it you're afraid of what people might say? Are you afraid of the embarrassment? What's the actual fear under it all? And peel back those layers and go, okay, so I'm afraid of being embarrassed. What happens if I'm embarrassed? Then it feels like a death when you feel like you're going to be embarrassed. Like you don't want to feel that at all. So how can you embrace failure? How can you hold that piece of you that's afraid to be teased or made fun of? How can you recognize that the people that are going to tease you and make fun of you or scoff aren't your people? How can you be prepared for that and not have like your guard up, but recognize that like people are going to say anything that it's going to make you feel embarrassed. Sometimes it can be your closest family or your friends, and those hurts can run deep, and they can be even unconscious to a point of you're like, I don't know why I'm afraid of doing this, but I just don't like it, and I avoid it at all costs because the potential pain, and maybe you don't even think about it that much. You've turned it off so well that you're like, I won't even go there, because having to go there means having to relive something that I don't ever want to relive, and it's just not fun. And the failure piece is huge. A lot of ADHD people have rejection sensitivity, and it's not even actually being rejected. It's the threat, the possible perceived. It could be the look on someone's face and you think, oh, they hate me. And then we spiral inward. And so and I don't want you to run away from opportunities and experiences where you might avoid that. And I think that's one thing that I did in the beginning is as I started to learn more about ADHD and as I started to recognize how it shows up in my business, I started to avoid situations, people, and places that would possibly trigger any sort of fear response or anything that could provoke a negative emotion, and realizing It's not about running away from situations. It's about learning to find the tools and be equipped to navigate those situations. And so if you have a fear of failure, if you have a fear of rejection, if you're afraid that you'll do something in business and all your clients will leave you, or you'll raise your prices and your clients will tell you that you're not allowed to, I think a really important thing for ADHD business owners is learning where your self-worth and self-esteem is based out of. And if you're handing your self-worth and your self-value and your self-esteem to your clients and the praise that they give you, then they can take it away. And learning to develop, and this is stuff that my community and Rock Your Business, we really work really hard on, because you can learn all the things to do to run your business. You could be addicted to learning, but allergic to implementing. And I will tell you, friend, implementation of business as an ADHD entrepreneur is not just about checking off the to-do list. It's about doing the inner work and the healing of understanding who you are, that you're worthy and valuable without any clients, without your clients telling you how amazing you are, without the tips that they give you, without them praising you on social media. You, friend, are so worthy, and you are so valuable, and you are made for so much more than you're giving yourself credit for. And you need to stop waiting for other people to give you permission. And it doesn't mean that rejection won't hurt still, but it won't crumble you to pieces. It won't keep you up at night if someone doesn't like their hair or their service, because you know that you as a human being, like them not liking your service or you making a mistake doesn't mean you're a failure or you're a mistake. And really disassociating who you are at your core from who people perceive you to be or what you've done. I hope that makes sense. So ADHD is a total superpower. But let's not pretend it's all sunshine and rainbows all the time. We have to deal with shiny object syndrome and being squirrely, procrastination, and oh my gosh, it's so hard to stay consistent. Even with this podcast, I find sometimes it's like, I want to get things done and be done and then take a holiday from them. So there'll be times where I'm like, I'm going to record 5 podcast episodes, because there's something about routine and consistency that can feel daunting and I can feel trapped in, and I don't ever want to feel trapped. And that's something that's been a resounding theme in my life, is like feeling trapped is something that I'm terrified of. And so showing up consistently is really hard. And I'm like, the only thing I'm consistent at is being inconsistent. So let's talk about consistency and why we're so afraid of it. I think that's one of the reasons why I went into business for myself, is because I wanted to have control. There was this fear of not having control over my life. And I don't know if this is an ADHD thing or just a life thing, but I think feeling the freedom to be creative and create what I want is hugely helpful for my ADHD brain. And I need to find the moment that something feels too routine, I need to switch it up. So I need to have a flexible schedule. And that's one thing of being a service provider that owned my own business. I could change my schedule. I could decide if I wanted a day off. I always had the drive and the ambition and the work ethic to keep working, but I liked feeling like I had control and I wasn't trapped. But I'm curious, what's the number one ADHD struggle in your business? I feel like this podcast episode is so ADHD right now. I'm like all over the board. I'm actually very tired in the moment while I'm recording this. In my brain, it's so funny how lately every time, like, what was it? The podcast, it was a couple weeks ago where it was like all about procrastinating, and I was like procrastinating recording it, and now it's like all about ADHD, and I feel like I'm looking out my window while I record this and I'm feeling squirrely and my brain's feeling all over the place. But I'm curious, what's one if you've been diagnosed or you suspect you have ADHD, what's one struggle? I want you to think about it right now as a business owner that you see it coming up for you. And if you think about it, DM me on Instagram at Dawn Bradley and let me know. And I'm curious also if you've ever abandoned a great business idea. You've got it planned all in your head, but then when you go to take action, you get scared. You're like, actually, I don't want it that bad. And it like feels good to know that you could do it if you really wanted to, but it's the actual follow through that you struggle with, because know that you are not alone in that. And I want to know, how do you personally handle procrastination and last minute panic mode? I really want to take note of the listeners and understand you guys, because I know that we're not alone in this, and I know procrastination is something that I still struggle with. But what I've learned to do is, instead of shaming myself for it all the time, like, why can't I get to it sooner? I've just learned I work best last minute, and so I try to create last minute things for myself that I can still get done on time, if that makes sense. I try to hijack my brain. And also, I want you to think about this for yourself. What's a business system you tried but completely failed at because it didn't work for your ADHD? Because this is what I see happening. I have an online program for self-employed creative service providers. But I find as an ADHD entrepreneur, online courses and programs are very hard for me if they're self-paced. And that's why the Rock Your Business community has, when you join, you get 3 months of group coaching. And then you can extend that if you want. But the accountability and community are essential for my brain. Like, I cannot do stuff if I'm left to my own devices and there's no urgency or time limit. And so having an online program that I always have, I just never get to. And I think that might be the case for you as well. And so if you've gotten other programs or they felt like daunting and overwhelming and like way too long of to-do lists, please know that Rock Your Business is different and it's made for people like you and me. So I want you to know that you don't have to change your ADHD brain to be successful. You need to accept it and harness it and lean into it. You just need to learn how to work with it instead of fighting against it all the time. Honestly, I totally got roped in by all those people saying, you need to get up at 5 a.m. in the morning and have a routine to be successful. And honestly, that's lasted me a week whenever I've done it. I've learned that I need my sleep and I have a better start late to the day. And honestly, like anytime I see something online, this is the way you got to do it, I resist it. Tell me to do something some way and you will guarantee that I don't do it or I do it the opposite way. It's like that. It's like some defiance in me. And like the best thing I can tell you, the biggest hack for my ADHD brain is setting a timer and seeing if I can get a task done in under 20 minutes. That helps me the most. Also, I'll make my big long to-do list and then I will take 3 things off of it and put it on a separate piece of paper and just go check off those 3 things, because the long to-do list will feel so overwhelming and I won't know where to start. So I ask myself, what's the most important things I get done today? Right now, take those only 3 things and finish them right away. So friend, I want you to know that ADHD is not your enemy. It's the reason you think bigger and you move faster and you create magic in your business. Again, the key isn't to fight against it, it's to build a business that works for it. And if you need help with that, go grab my free masterclass at dawnbradley.com/free class. You'll get instant access right away. If you learn differently and your brain works differently, you're ambitious, you're determined, that you are capable, that capability is not an issue, but you just can't seem to get through things, you can't follow through, or you keep getting stuck, this masterclass and teaching, I think, will be really great for you. I'd love for you to go check it out. And if it feels like it's a good fit, it's free. It's 45 to 60 minutes long. And you learn about my program, Rock Your Business, too. But I want you to start thinking about how you can stop feeling guilty for working differently than others. And because guilt is not a good motivator. I used guilt and shame to motivate me for so many years. And now being in my 40s, I'm like, that ain't working no more. Compassion and grace and acceptance are the way, friend. Learn to love yourself. And so if I can give you one little homework piece from this podcast episode today, is go write a love letter to yourself from a younger version of yourself. So write a love letter to you from a younger version, thanking you for the path you are leading them down. So friend, here's the takeaway. ADHD is not your enemy. It's the reason you think bigger, move faster, and create absolute magic in your business. The key isn't fighting it, it's building a business that actually works with your brain, not against it. And if you need help with that, go grab my free masterclass at dawnbradley.com/free class. You can find it in the links in the show notes. You'll learn how to stop overcomplicating things, take messy, immediate action, and actually get shit done without burning out. Oh, and next week, we're tackling one of the biggest fears holding service providers just like you back, raising your prices. Here's what you're going to learn. The real emotional blocks behind pricing fears. Spoiler, it's not just about the numbers. How to confidently charge what you're worth without guilt, and a step-by-step plan to increase your prices and keep your dream clients. So until then, stay weird, stay messy, and most importantly, stay unapologetically you. We'll see you next week.